Hey guys, welcome back to the Attachment Authority with Jesse Rass from Jesse Rass Enterprises. I hope everybody's having a great day today. I know I am. We're going to get into some new material today. We're going to be talking about two things. We're going to be talking about a brush cutter for a skid steer versus a mulching head and the differences between the two. So starting off, we're going to be talking about a brush cutter. All right. What is a brush cutter? A brush cutter is a design to cut brush, grass. It will cut trees up to 6-8 inch material. It is a fast cutting device. It will go over more acres per hour than a mulching head. It is a lower maintenance item than a mulching head. The costing of that unit is going to be a lot less than a mulching head, but it is not going to have the finished product of a mulching head. It has several different options on them. So let's get into some details on a brush cutter. So here we go here. So on our brush cutter, the one I'm going to focus on here is from a company out of North Carolina called Construction Attachments. And just for talking purposes here, we're going to focus on two models that we offer and how it's built and what it does and all that jazz. So we offer two different models, a 60 and a 72 inch at Construction Attachments. There are several other markets out there, several other ones on the market that are wider than that. So the basics of a brush cutter, it cuts up to 8 inch material. They do have ours has a 3-blade system, so it's a swinging blade style. We do have an option to have mulching teeth on the bottom, as you can see right here. Or right here, this picture right here, it's a mulching tooth. So it's going to be more for brush, for small trees up to 8 inch, which 8 inch ain't no joke. You hit an 8 inch tree, you got something. It's going to be to move over the property a lot faster, but it's not going to have the finished look as a mulching head is going to have. But it has its place. So if you're a farming guy or a land property owner that just wants to have a brush cutter to go cut down all those leftover saplings and stuff, you don't care about like how finished it looks and pulverized, a brush cutter is a good choice for you. Like I said, man, the strength and durability of a brush cutter, is the thickness of the steels and the framing, the blade bar thickness, that kind of stuff. The carbide option is a nice thing to look at when you're looking at a brush cutter, because that can help make your property look a little nicer when you're cutting through the material and you have those mulching teeth, like I said, in the bottom. It'll do a little better job, make it a little finer. It won't do what a mulching head will do, but it will make it a little better. So on a cost basis, if you're getting into the industry to sell your service, a brush cutter is a good choice. On the low end, you're going to be looking at anywhere from, $5,000, all the way up to $20,000 range. But those numbers are directly affected with warranties. Like for instance, Cal 4 has an 18-month warranty. We ain't gonna have a $5,000 cutter. We're gonna have a higher dollar cutter because of the quality of the product. So looking at those prices, you need to look at the thicknesses, the blade bars, the capacity. What kind of warranty they offering? Are they offering an 18-month warranty like Construction Attachments is? Are they offering no warranty? Are they offering a 6-month or a 12-month, whatever it may be? Look into that. So I like to see a brush cutter on they can be put on 75 horsepower machines, even smaller, to 100 horsepower machines. We can run anything from 25 gallons a minute up to 45 gallons a minute. The size of the brush cutter you need to pair with the size of the machine you're running. So if you're running a 75 horsepower machine, I'd recommend a 60 inch cutting width to get the most performance out of your machine. If you're running a 100 horsepower machine, with 40 gallons a minute, then I'd like to see you on a 72 inch machine, or larger, okay, for that application. Getting out of this mindset of like outside of the tracks, I get that, you know what I mean? That is a to-do, but also you need to really focus on what is my gallons per minute, what is my pressure, what is my skid steer actually weigh, and what's going to give you the most performance, okay? Because having a big old wide brush cutter and then you're not performing properly, that's just inefficient and not a good deal. So rotary cutters, like I said, you want to look at how heavy they're built, how much they weigh. For instance, like a 100 horsepower, machine weed seal 72-inch from Cal 4, it's a 2,000 pound cutter, man. Look at those weights, man. That steel. I mean, that's the longevity of that machine. Brush cutters you can also put on excavators. We do excavator brush cutters that cut up, from 20,000 to 12,000 pound machine, size cutters, and then we have a brush cutter that will go all the way up to a 50,000 pound machine. So those range in price from the $8,500 mark on your smaller machines, 20,000 pound and down, all the way up to the $23,000 mark, on your larger excavators that are up to 50,000 pounds. So that's the basics of a brush cutter in general. So you need to make sure you choose appropriately. So like that's a brush cutter is a cost-effective way to get into cutting down brush with your skid steer or excavator or your business if you're trying to offer the service. Okay, so that's that. So mulching heads. I'm big into mulching heads. I've been big into mulching heads for a long time. I rep for a company called Gyrotrack. They're out of St. Justine, Canada, in Quebec. This is just one of our flagship units, but it's a 500 cutter head, 500 HF. The biggest thing with a mulching head, it is going to be more money. You need to look at this. You need to look at a depth control head. And what I mean by a depth control, or a planer style head. Now, these skid steers today, 75 or 100 horsepower skid steers, they've got higher pressures, higher flows now, but having a planer style head or a controlled bite is very important for the success or the productivity of that unit. Typically back in the past, Gyrotrack, for instance, the whole ring design, as you see right here, or planer style drum, was for low horsepower machines to be productive because you're controlling the bite, so you're not biting all at once. So if you see these heads that have real aggressive teeth with no ring around it, I don't know that I would focus on that particular head unless you have a lot of horsepower to pull it, because that's going to pull away from a lot of your horsepower. So that's that little bit. But mulching heads, okay, what they're going to do for you? Mulching heads are gonna go on, skid steers, excavators, but they're going to do a very finished product. They're going to make sawdust like out of a chainsaw, man. They are going to beautify property really, really well. We've got mulching heads that go on skid steers that are 75 horsepower that are going to be like backyard bandits. I don't really suggest, taking a 75 horsepower unit and thinking you're going to take over the world, because you're not, but it does have its place in the market. It's a lighter machine. You get a head that will fit it, maybe something like a 49, 50 inch, you know what I'm saying, cutting width. For a 75 high flow machine, I recommend a 75 high flow. Will do a good job, but it's going to do 4 or 5 inch material. You can do a little bigger. It's just going to take you a little bit longer. On the 100 horsepower machines is where you're really going to get your production. On a mulching head, it's gonna give you, a wider cut, and for instance, a 500 HF gives you a 65 inch cut, but we do have bigger heads, wider heads if you want that, but you just got to have the horsepower and the gallons per minute to do it. So to answer that question, what do you actually need on a 75 horsepower machine to be productive? I think you need about 30 to 35 gallons a minute at 3,600 psi to do a successful mulching head on a 75 horsepower machine with the right proper sizing. On a larger mulching head, like a 500 or 600, but 500 is what I got on the screen. That's a 65 inch cutting width, total 77 inch. You're gonna need 40 gallons a minute at 3,800 to 4,000 psi to be successful. And I mean these will go all the way up to they can handle all the way up to 6,000 psi at 55 gallons a minute, roughly. So or 50 gallons a minute, excuse me. So at 6,000 psi. So that's a lot. So typically, your typical 100 horsepower machines have 40 gallons a minute at 35 to 4,000 psi on average. Whether it be a Kubota, a John Deere, a Caterpillar, Takahauchi, ASV, Wacker-Neuson. I mean, all those guys. So mulching heads, they do come where you can put them on excavators as well. You can put them on as small as a 12,000-pound machine. Now, saying that, on a 12,000-pound machine, a mulching head's good if it's sized appropriately. I probably wouldn't go on something or it's got a dedicated pump. There's a lot of robbing that goes on in fluid when you're dealing with your smaller excavators. I say 12,000 pound, even really 20,000 pound and down, man. A lot of them don't have a dedicated pump. So these are questions you need to ask your dealer on their machines: does it have a dedicated pump to the auxiliary circuit? If it does not, how much fluid is it robbing when you boom up, boom down, move it side to side, all that jazz? Because if it says, oh man, it's got 20 gallons a minute, and that's what it says in the brochure, but then you move the stick and you got 10, you ain't got nothing. You know what I'm saying? So you need to make sure you ask those questions. What is the true amount of fluid going to the auxiliary circuit continuously to run that mulching head on an excavator? That is so important. It is so important that it will fail if you don't know that information. You will not be happy. So make sure you ask that question. Now, if you want a mulching head to rock and roll on an excavator, you need to go with a 50,000-pound machine. Something that's putting out a 40 gallons a minute at 4,500 psi. If you want to do some real work, okay, that's my recommendation on that. So you need something that's got the horsepower to do it. It's all this is with a mulching head is about hydraulic horsepower. Hydraulic horsepower is a pretty simple thing to do. It's psi times gallons per minute divided by the constant 1714 equals hydraulic horsepower. So you can see that in the screen. That right there is how you determine how productive a machine is going to be. On a mulching head for a skid steer, I like to see about 85 hydraulic horsepower or above for a 100 horsepower machine, for example. But that is pretty much the math you need to determine the real numbers of hydraulic horsepower. So in ending, I'd like to say, a mulching head has its place in the market. If you want a very finished look for your property, you want it dressed up, you want it beautified, you want it pulverized like sawdust, that's a big deal. You're going to have more costing in your product. I mean, the mulching heads for a skid steer for 100 horsepower are going to go up to $45,000 to $50,000. But it's going to beautify the property more so than a rotary style cutter now. But a rotary cutter has a big place in the market, man. If you want to get in and you want to do larger amounts of acreage per hour, a rotary cutter is going to be your way to go. You're just not going to have the finished product as a mulching head. So you can say they're about half the money. For a relative example, they're going to be about half the money, but you're paying for that finished product. That's why the mulching heads are more expensive. So determining if you're a landowner or you're a contractor, which one you need depends on what your market is. If your market is, hey, I want it beautified and perfection, then you're going to want to go with a mulching head. If you just want to cut through material and clear land and they don't care so much about the finished product, then a rotary style cutter is the way to go. And listen, if you have any questions, just give me a call at 803-420-4102 or check out my website at www.jesserassenterprises.com. And in closing, I'd like to say, hey man, appreciate you guys watching my podcast. I enjoy doing this, man, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.